John Del Vecchio, and I have my school, Street Skills, and the Cornering Confidence program is, sort of my thing. First thing I want to say, guys, is this isn't a scientific study, okay? This is my observations of sort of the life cycle of the typical motorcyclist. And we know that people have varying experiences, but these are from my own personal experiences. And, perhaps you can share some thoughts. Did I miss something? Do you agree or disagree? It is really hard to categorize everybody perfectly or to put everybody in the right slot based on their experience level and that kind of thing. But I thought I came up with some really good, observations here. And there really isn't a specific amount of time each stage lasts. It has more to do with the progression and growth of a rider. And what I have noticed, and maybe you've noticed as well too, with people that have entered motorcycling since you have, that the life cycle does get a little bit more condensed, or what I would call bingier with age. So an older rider, when they get into it, let's say at 40, 50, 60 years old, they tend to kind of condense it and try to get more, more into it with the limited time they have left. And that the older riders they move through, maybe make up for lost time, that kind of thing. And it also this life cycle, it doesn't really have to do with the age of the rider. It could be, various different ages. It's stages of the person's motorcycling life. So maturity, though, age, and those things can also be factored in. So that's just kind of a little preface to what I came up with. And if you look at the little image there, that sort of plots it. The idea is, I don't know if you guys know marketing well, but there's something called the product life cycle. Okay, when a product's introduced until it's pulled off the market, basically. And I'm a marketing teacher, and so I sort of it fit with me. So let's start right away with the introduction stage. So this is somebody just starting out, right? So it could be any age or just deciding they want to ride a motorcycle. And I have 4 kind of general categories of things for each of the stages, and then just general observations. The first thing is the attitude of a brand new rider. And, we can see this when they arrive at the coffee shop or this and that. And I refer back to my own experience, or maybe you have as well. It's like, how do I not look like a newbie? How do I not make a fool of myself? And you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. When it comes to gear, there's not a whole lot of focus placed on that. I mean, the MSF course will tell you, hey, wear these things, but generally, they want, the new riders kind of want to fit in, make sure that they're, maybe make sure they have the helmet on, the jacket, that kind of thing. But they have so much to think about right now that they don't have that much of a focus on the gear. And of course, the training, my observation is that, and of course, being an MSF coach for the 10 years I did it, plus my Street Skills school, is that this is the most common stage for someone to get training. And I think the biggest reason for that is because the waiver courses, and they want to get their license, right? And when it comes to crash risk, in the introduction stage of the life cycle, it usually has to do with some kind of inexperience, an ignorance. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just that you don't know what you don't know when you're new, and a disconnect from reality. Okay, it's like, I see people riding motorcycles. It looks like fun. I don't know anybody that really has had a problem. I'm really new at this, and I bet you most people probably don't fall over. That's kind of this blind and happy type of thing. So just as you look at those 4 things, does that kind of fit in with what you guys would say?
Yeah, so far, John, I think so.
some other general observations again. And I'm not trying to, embarrass anybody or say that one stage is better than the other. But what I noticed too is that new riders tend to be, overly enthusiastic and what I mean by that is maybe they're more vocal, they're motivated to identify as a rider. They're really, really enthusiastic about doing this thing. And which is what you want. I mean, it's a new thing, it's a brand new experience. And as we all know, riding a motorcycle is sort of a special experience that not everyone frankly gets a chance to enjoy. But they're outwardly excited about it. Also, unless they have ridden dirt bikes, which is probably a fair number of people, um, they're starting at zero. It's kind of like, and we might even say that, the generations coming up now are not the on any Sunday generation, and so I think you're finding that maybe more people that are getting into riding don't really have the dirt bike experience. They don't have that, um, you know, the dirt bike um, foundation, which is really important, I think. And it's one of my regrets that I didn't try a little harder at a younger age to get that experience. And I'm trying to get it now. The next thing is they identify as a motorcyclist, meaning uh, they're looking for a tribe, a sense of belonging. This was my experience. I really didn't know anybody who rode motorcycles when I first started, and you're sort of looking for that group. And I hung around cruiser riders. I hung around the coffee shop that I hang around now. I've seen different types of riders, and you're just when you look for this sense of belonging in the introduction stage, it's like usually it has to do with maybe what your friends are riding, the type of bike, the your image of what you see as a rider. I actually have two people right in the top of my brain um, that are kind of, I think, in this stage. Still, one person is the son of a rider that I know is an acquaintance, and he bombs around in this Nighthawk, and he literally wears like a Hawaiian shirt, shorts, and in sneakers, as he's riding around town. And this other one is he's a newer, younger teacher at my school, and he has sort of like a Honda Rebel style motorcycle. And you know, a lot of times it's based on the motorcycle that you have at the time. But again, sense of belonging is kind of really important here. This can also, in my experience, it can extend into the next stage as well. I mean, it took me quite a while really to find, really my tribe of riders, the ones that I really identified with. But it's generally a relatively short stage, the introduction stage. It's not, it's typically, it's quick because, given that you're riding, let's say that that first 6 months, that first season or two, we start to, what I observe, move into the next stage. The next stage, we kind of go up into what I'm calling the growth stage, right? So the attitude, is identifying that tribe. I really like this. I'm going to keep doing this. And, when I first was riding, I remember I was telling you I didn't have a whole lot of people to ride with, but I was still looking for that tribe. I was involved in a lot of online forums, of people that had the same motorcycle as me. I was kind of feeling out who was in my local area, that kind of thing to ride with. But again, I realized that I wasn't going to probably be a good cruiser rider. It didn't seem to fit, sort of my personality and my idea about gear and stuff like that. Not cruiser riders, because when they look for their tribe, they found that the sport touring crowd or the whatever wasn't, they like, they like the cruiser crowd. So when it comes to gear, remember, we're kind of at an early stage here. So it's kind of like a habit. You do something for a very long time based on how you form the habit. And I believe that, typically what your tribe is wearing is what you end up wearing. And I'll give you an example. In the sport touring crowd, it used to be Tour Master was kind of like entry level, and then Revit was, kind of like an upscale. And then the climb gear came in, and it was like this stuff's not cheap. I know Jack has a jacket, and I have some of the stuff, and so you kind of, if other people in your tribe sort of are wearing certain gear, you're going to do that as well. You feel more compelled to fit the style, and it just so happens that like the cruiser riders might like a little bit more of an open experience. Okay, is a way to say it. When I go to Pennsylvania with my friends, we were just down there on Memorial Day, and lots of people without helmets. And I think that it has a lot to do probably with what that tribe is wearing. For just another to make the point, I rarely, maybe once in my life, I've seen somebody not on a cruiser in these states, in Pennsylvania, not wearing a helmet, right? So you might catch the occasional person on a BMW in Pennsylvania not wearing a helmet, but the vast majority seems to be on cruisers, right? And together, that kind of thing. And so I'm not making a judgment call. What I'm saying is that the gear is typically what the tribe wears. But I'll say this also: uh, when it comes to those in the growth stage that purchase better gear, it's typically because they may have observed or experienced a fall of some kind, and they start to see the need more to protect themselves better. Because tip overs might happen, and things like that, or you go on a ride with someone and they fall, right? And then you say, well, geez, I didn't like the road rash Johnny got, and so it may kind of stimulate that purchase of more gear. But generally, it's what the tribe's wearing. Training, in my opinion, really is not very common uh, in this stage. What you have is people who just took the MSF course, let's say, or they bypassed it. They have taken their way. They haven't taken a waiver course, or they have, but they're kind of doing this thing. They feel comfortable, and hey, what's to know, right? You just ride the thing, and everything works out. And I think that maybe we still haven't seen some of the real downside to having poor skills at this stage. So I would say the growth stage, in my opinion, wouldn't be is not very common. Uh, and then the the crash risk, and again, this isn't based on a scientific study. This is based on just my experience trying to profile people in different stages. But the crash risk for this group in that growth stage is they may be overconfident. They may start to ride beyond their skill level because they're riding with some other people. Maybe they found that tribe. The tribe's going a little faster than they're comfortable. And they really want to shed this newbie reputation, right? I mean, once you get into this stage, it's kind of like, look, I'm one of you guys. This is it, and I need to kind of behave in a way that says, hey, I'm not a newbie anymore, right? So would you contradict or agree or disagree with any of these things?
I think it's pretty good. I was kind of identifying with some of your course there as far as, I had a Gold Wing, which was a cruiser. I put a couple 100,000 on it and totaled it, and had the experience of having a lot of gravel shoved up into my face on the half helmet. And then I went to climb gear
Okay.
and a showy helmet modular so that the gravel can't get up there anymore. Not that I plan on crashing, but then I also started, doing czars courses every summer to enhance my capabilities. And it's amazing what a face full of gravel will teach you to
Yeah.
do.
Experience is a great teacher if you're open to the message, right? And I think that you're illustrating that perfectly. Now, um, some other general observations with the growth stage that I found deep down, there's this realization that there's a lot to learn. And I think sometimes people might avoid taking a course or doing something educational because it may reveal to them a lack of skill, and maybe their self-confidence could take a hit. It's like, we almost kind of don't want to know what we don't know because of this realization. And it's usually a subtle in the background thing. We say, look, out of sight, out of mind, everything's going fine. Okay, maybe I tipped over in the gravel driveway or this and that, but I just don't want to really think I don't know as much as there is to know. And along with this, they're still having fun and thrills just being out there, right? So in this stage, this is where I myself remember saying it, and I've heard others say this, where they kind of set low expectations for the foreseeable future. For example, they might say something like, I just want to get out in the wind and take it easy. I don't want to drag a knee or anything like that. I just want to get out there and enjoy it and take it nice and easy. And many people stay right there, where they just want to get out and take the turns real easy and just, you know, look around at the scenery and just be out in the wind. But I think what happens is, again, this goes back to the first bullet. You know, when I was thinking this, that I just want to get out there. I don't need to be a sport rider or be, Ricky Racer type or something like that. It was because I knew that to get where I was to that next level was going to take a lot of time and effort. And so it was easier just to discount, I guess, the motivation to do that kind of riding. And in this stage, you could be fueled also to have a lifelong learning approach if you bring the deep down realization there's a lot to learn more to the forefront of your consciousness, basically. So some other general observations in the growth. One of the things with this one is I find that people in this stage are sort of overtly expressive of their knowledge of the motorcycling world, and they look to prove their worthiness as a rider. So they might talk about a MotoGP race. They might, explain how ABS works to you, or and I just remember that when I was newer, when I was in the growth stage, I just remember saying things that sometimes were complete garbage, as if I heard somebody say it, and then I just kind of regurgitated it, maybe not even understanding fully well why I was saying it, but there's this sort of this desire to just have everyone understand that what you're talking about. And it comes down to one of these things. Sometimes it's better to just not say anything than let other people know by saying something that so when newbies come around, or when I say people in the growth stage, sometimes they might say something that's straight out incorrect, or something that I think it could be a little bit of like, white lie or something like that, of something that they did. I don't really judge the people. It's part of what I think is in this life cycle. You're trying to convince everybody, hey, I'm worthy to be here, when really riding just makes you worthy to be here, you know, proving themselves as one of us, right? That is it kind of piggybacks on that. And surprisingly, when people do bring up things, again, some of the coffee shop guys, Jack, that might be in this stage here, occasionally they'll come in and they might be doing this kind of thing, and I might learn something, or I might get a perspective on something that I really didn't in the past. And so it's good that people in the tribe, in the growth stage, are kind of stimulating conversation. One of the examples I can give you was we were taking it was called the Thrills in the Hills ride, and it's kind of like a gravel road ride. And one of the people, this was 10, 15 years ago, and one of the people on the ride was saying, "Oh, I was going downhill," and I'm like thinking to myself, "Don't use front brake, don't use front brake, only use rear," this kind of thing. And a more experienced rider that day said, "Well, actually, you should use your front brake even on gravel going downhill, because your weight's going forward, you're going to get more braking power with that, and you just have to be careful that you don't overdo it, because yeah, you have less traction because of the weight and the gravel and that kind of thing, and it could be a problem." And so some people feel like, well, I'm not going to say anything to the person, let the person just say what they want, and that and the other thing. Now, sometimes you tell somebody, well, actually, you can do this, and they might be embarrassed, or they might say you're wrong, and they might try to make you look like a fool in front of other people. And so sometimes, depending on people's personalities, it's best not to just say anything, right? But in this particular instance with the break downhill, the way the person did it was very dignified. It wasn't like, "Hey, you fool." It was, "Well, actually, try this," or it was well done. So again, these overly expressive conversations can be very productive for the two people, obviously, in the conversation, and maybe people within earshot, because people can also chime in, and you almost have what you would call, a little training session right there, because really that's how a lot of information is exchanged, right? At the coffee shop, riding on the Sunday rides together, stopping for a smoke or whatever. So that's kind of the end of the growth stage. Now on to the maturity stage. And so as you notice, I've made this one kind of longer along, figure that's a time along the bottom, right? Like now until later, right? Over chronologically left to right. And that I made it longer and a little bit skewed up because, I think that, I'm really not sure exactly what the the vertical axis there. That's probably more uh, riding, um, amount of riding or that kind of thing. But so we're going to be there for a long time. We're probably going to get a little better at it. Um, I think this is probably more frequency and skill, that kind of thing. It's just an idea, right? So in this stage, most of us are going to spend a lot of time here, okay? Because we're going to go through the first two relatively quickly. So once we get into the maturity stage, now it's how do we gain status and respect in our tribe, right? So now we're in a tribe. How do we become, someone that's special, right? And this is like Maslow's hierarchy. Once you have belonging needs met, then it's the self pride and the self esteem level, actually. And so how do we gain a status? Now, some people might become an officer in a club. Some people might become an MSF coach. Okay, some people might write a book. Okay, that kind of thing. And so, but regarding the gear, by this point, we have started to maybe see the ugly side of what can happen if people aren't wearing gear. And we start to say, well, I'm like, it's time to really not skimp, look for good stuff. This is probably like your peak of when you're buying quality gear. You're also looking now for comfort in your experience of riding. So you might have a mesh jacket for the summer, specialty gear. You're going to have rain boots, that, covers that go over your boots if it's raining, that kind of thing. Maybe a heated vest, right? So that this is where we start to say, hey, I just need a little more protection and I just need a little more comfort. Training, I didn't want to put non-existence, not common, not existent, or whatever I meant to say, but it's more rare, okay, than the initial introduction stage. This is, it's the BMW clubs, the sport touring riders, and of course, like track day people, they're getting training. They're kind of in that mode, and um, it's rare, but it does happen. It's the in my opinion, it's the only other stage where we really can characterize training as a thing. It's besides the introduction. And it is a longer point in someone's career, so there's a lot of opportunities there. I'm going to talk about some more about this on the next slide about the training aspect. But when it comes to crash risk, it's sort of trying to live up to high expectations and respect. Okay, you might be pushing your limits, riding closer to the edge, and so to get the past level of excitement, it typically would require higher speed and maybe other risks might be taken. Okay, so you're going to start passing that line of cars. You're going to be doing things that just might put you in a more riskier state because you're sort of looking for that the thrill you used to get at the lower speeds and lower stage and skill level, that kind of thing. So when you look at those four things, I mean, do you agree, disagree? Any comments or things you want to say about them?
John, I'll jump in. Pain's a good teacher too.
Yeah.
Back in my days in the trail bikes, showing off in front of the guys or girls, I end up with a lot of, I won't say road rash, but we'll say dirt rash. There's a lot of things that kind of got me there. But, one of the key things to me really is ride with the group you're riding with. If you're better, then stay at their level. If you're not quite as good, ride behind. Just don't endanger anybody else. As far as pushing the limits, that's the thrill of it. But at the same time, if I'm going to push it, I won't be out front when I do it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot packed in there. And it's like, in my own experience, again, a lot of this is based off of my experience. This could be the opposite of someone else's experience. And we'll see that, maybe, like you said, we could fluctuate in the maturity stage from what, you have problems from pushing the limits. It makes you back off. Like you were saying, a mistake of some kind is a really good teacher, and that can make it so that we try not to do that thing in the future. And our riding group kind of struggles with this too. To the general observations, first of all, I say it's the longest stage, I think, but it can be relatively short if a rider gets spooked and they want out, or if they get a late start to riding. It may not be longer. So someone who started riding at 25, maybe maturity stage for 30 years, 40 years, you know what I mean? Whereas someone who started a little later might drop off, after only a few years, but it's typically the longest stage because it's where we spend most of our time. Now, the awareness of next level of excitement, what I mean by this is normally the slower, low-skilled riders seem to get little respect in tribes. Now, I'm not saying this is a good or bad thing, and I'm not saying that it's actually true. What I'm saying is that when people get to this stage, they may be doing a little bit of self-reflection and say, hey, geez, I don't want to be perceived as a low-skilled rider because I've been riding longer than Billy, and Billy's leaving me in the dust. Okay. So what we also see in this stage is others in the tribe are more skillful, they're faster, perhaps even elegant in their controls. And we want to do that too. We want to become, we aspire to that. And this may or may not result in formal training. So, some people talk about getting training, and a lot of people like training, and there's people that are like training junkies. But then there's people who read books, right? So, I mean, before I wrote Cornering Confidence, I mean, I read probably 20 books at least, okay? And I learned something from those. And so it doesn't always have to be formal training. It could even just be reading the safety column in a motorcycle magazine, But it's the kind of acknowledgement that you want to become better at this thing. One of the things that I also want to say about the awareness, primarily riders want cornering training, although mental strategy training is available. But again, a lot of people at this stage aren't like, I want to be a better expressway driver, or I want to be a better, traffic rider. Some do. I mean, if you live in a place where there's busy traffic, you might want to pursue more of the mental strategies for that. But, I noticed that the actual traffic safety, traffic management courses are really, there's not that many of them available. Most become like technique classes, is next level training from the MSF course, which by the way, I think it does an awesome job at the traffic management, search, evaluate, execute. I think they do a really good job with that. But there are advanced things you can do in traffic as well. Now, this is something that I think is kind of a really important observation in the maturity stage, is that the reality is when you increase your skills, it may decrease safety. Okay, there's research that actually proves this. Meaning, when I first started doing coaching tours, I had a person from an organization that I belonged to send me a study out of, I think, Australia or whatnot, when they did on-street training. And what they found was that there really was no safety benefit in the end, decreasing crashes, let's say. What they did find was more enjoyable experiences. People enjoyed their riding more. So with Cornering Confidence, my course, my teaching, everything like that, I believe you're safer if you can control the motorcycle better. But I focus more on, I want to help people build a more enjoyable experience, because I don't want to be promising that if what they do here in Cornering Confidence or anything I teach, that they're going to 100% be safer. And the basis behind this is sort of like the seatbelt law, right? So if you have a car with crumple zones and airbags and all these things, they find that when people just drive more riskier, okay, because they feel invulnerable, they feel invulnerable. Or for example, the helmet phenomenon. Someone puts a helmet on, they feel, well, hey, if I crash, I have the helmet on, and they might take more risks. Now, this is like documented research that does show that what happens is, like, there's other ones that I could probably find that show that the training that we all think does great things for safety may or may not really make us more safe out there. What they found in the street study that I talked about was that the speeds increased, okay, of the riders. So after they got the training, they rode faster, okay, and speed is a contributing factor to crashes. Now, just to be clear, I do believe that control of your motorcycle is a very important factor in reducing crashes. It's part of the philosophy that I've built my school on, because I've actually, read a couple articles that talks about, Nick Einatz wrote the articles, an article about two different coaching philosophies. And it had to do with like the Royal Air Force, and how to teach safety to the Air Force pilots was really not from a drill sergeant approach, but from a to be with, I think they called it brilliance in the basics. So if you become a brilliant rider is a goal that in turn makes you safer than when you say, do what I say, do it, just do it this way and everything, you know, follow these rules and that kind of thing. And so just keep that in mind. Simply getting training may not make you safer, only because of what I said. People start to say, well, I'm better now. I can ride faster now. I can handle the motorcycle at faster speeds now. And so they may take those chances. One of the things I think that anybody, you know, participating tonight could take from this is that it's good to get the training. It's good to develop your skills, but it's not a silver bullet. To your point, it's up to the individual to put that in the context that I'm more proficient, I'm better at this, but it doesn't remove the risk as much as I might think it does. Let's go on. One of the things here I want to kind of add to this too, this is an important point as well about in the maturity stage. Now, I noticed this with all the levels, all 4 levels. I noticed that there is a tendency to blame someone else if a crash occurs. Okay. We oftentimes hear, like, I know I've heard my relatives, they say, well, I don't worry about you. I worry about the other guy, the other people. But if you think, you know, I know Jack, you know, some of the people I know in my mishaps and things like that, it really wasn't another person's fault. You know what I mean? It probably could have been avoided had I done something different. I think it goes to like our egos and this and that. Hey, I'm a good rider. I've been doing this a while. I can't say I was the one that was at fault. There was gravel there. There was nothing I could do about it. If you're in the newer stages, earlier stages, it's like you want to prove, well, it wasn't me because I'm really good, guys. I still want to be in the clan, in the tribe. You know what I mean? And so what I have learned over the years is that by blaming the other guy, you know, it really does, it takes away a growth potential there, because you are, you know, you're less inclined to accept responsibility to take the appropriate action to kind of stop that from happening. You know, some people will have a mishap and then the first thing out of their mouth might be, well, this was someone else's fault in some way. And then later on, maybe acknowledge, well, I did this dumb thing. Another reason why I think people do this is because they may or may not know how to get it to not happen again, right? So they're like, well, geez, I don't know what happened, or I don't know what I could do to make it not happen again. So I can just shift the blame, and you know, nobody wants to think that they're not good at something, you know, especially something that almost might even define them, you know, as their lifestyle. So again, that's just something that I notice at all levels. But here, when we're starting to push limits, we may have more mishaps, more fallovers, that kind of thing. And so we just got to keep remember that. Well, okay, so yeah, I mean, if the bridge drops in front of you, you know, collapses, okay, it's not your fault, right? But some of the things, if you drill down deeper, maybe you could have been going a little slower. Maybe you could have been entering slower. You know, there's things that we can think about. So I think I had some more here. This goes to the opposite now, okay? Sometimes we have riders that think, well, I don't need training, okay?
Oh.
But it's actually the reverse, right? So we lose our edge once we get complacent, or maybe we age and we don't have the reaction time. And why I say it's in reverse is we are more in need of those refresher courses and the reading the book and the working on the skills, because of the complacency, the routineness. You know, just think about when you first started riding, you probably checked your tire pressure every single ride. you know what I mean, or whatever, because the MSF told you to. Well, now do you really check it every single ride? I mean, I have tire pressure monitoring system on one of my motorcycles, but I tend to check my tires often. But do you go through a T-Clocks inspection every single time you get on a bike? Probably not, right? So you take that mentality for even further, and you say to yourself, well, I've been doing this so long, I just do it. And I don't really have to get back down grounded to the basics. And what they might, what I say, what people do that they don't even really know it is, they might do training, okay, to gain some advantage back, because now they're losing their edge. They want to get that advantage back. So they might take training. They might, get a smaller motorcycle, okay, or something like that, to maintain this level of enjoyment or status. I mean, saying in the stage of maturity. Okay, they're still interested in doing this thing. So that was just one more last kind of point about maturity. The decline stage. And I have an arrow there because it's probably relatively short, okay? The attitude in this stage is, do I like this enough to continue? And it may or may not be because of age-related problems. I actually can think of one when I was kind of in my growth stage. There was a gentleman that he owns the coffee shop I go to. And I remember 10, 15 years ago, these guys were kind of doing what I'm doing with my friends, going on sport touring rides for weekends, days, overnights, that kind of thing. And the rides were typically sport touring oriented. Well, this person just decided they were going to go for, more of a dirt ride type situation. So they got into dirt for a while, and they got on the dirt back roads. And then, now they, take a few trips a year to see their friends down south. But, you seem to say, well, I want to keep doing this, but I kind of have to do it on my own terms. I actually have one of our close friends in the group. He's riding less with us now because he wants to slow it down a little bit. He wants to just smell the roses a little bit more. No one can make this decision for you in the decline stage. But so that's the attitude. Do I like this enough to continue, regardless of how many years you've been riding or your age? The gear seems to be like what they have accumulated through their maturity stage and the other stages. They may not be investing too much more into their gear. They're kind of wearing what they have, getting by with it. They're still kind of thinking, do I want to continue this thing? Think about being someone in the intro or growth stage. They'll say, I'm never going to stop riding. I'm going to ride till I'm 100, that kind of thing. Well, after 20 years of riding, 30, 40 years of riding, people sometimes just say, you know what, I've been there, I've done that. I know that, it's a riskier type of thing. And I had a couple bumps and bruises for this, and I'm just ready to maybe take up golf or something like that, right? The training is not common. I will say that I did teach in Iowa. So in Des Moines, at the BMW rally, I had a gentleman. It was like, gosh, late 70s, early 80s in one of my coaching tours. And I would say the BMW clubs probably would take the record for people that are the highest age that take the most training. I don't know if I'd put them in the decline stage yet, because I know people well into their 70s riding well and with no signs of stopping. And so I really don't think it is an age thing, but it definitely is a contributing factor. When it comes to crash risk, it's mostly ignoring the warning signs, maybe the physical effects of aging, reaction time, maybe some close calls. It's hard keeping the bike upright. All right. So there, we hate to say we do get weak, but motorcycles can be heavy. They can be hard to hold up. Of the basic four topic things there of the stages, I mean, what do you guys think? This is pretty much on par with what your experience is and what you see?
It's depressing.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because when I was in the growth stage, probably in introductory growth stage, I remember reading a story about this flat track racer that was in a nursing home, and he was 100 years old or something, and he every day when he died, like 100 years old, and every day he took a little moped and did laps in the parking lot, like 50 or 100 laps in a parking lot, like every day from the nursing home. And I said, man, that's somebody that like wrung the sponge on riding, Another interesting story, and this is another age-related thing that might, you said it's depressing, but I really like this one story that I read about. And he was like a tour guide, and he would take these people on motorcycle rides. And so, when you're on a motorcycle tour, I mean, you're putting miles on, right? I mean, you could be doing 200, 300, 400 miles in a day, right? So you get to the stop for the day, and everyone gets off their bikes. They want a shower. They want a dinner. They're ready to hang up the helmet, And so what he had said was, this one older gentleman, I think he said he was in his 80s, and he said, "Okay, guys, I'm gonna just go out for a little while longer," And the guy was like, "What are we talking about?" And we just put on like 300, 400 miles. He said, "Well, I'm 83 years old or whatever," and he said, "I don't know if I'll ever be back this way again, and I want to see as much as I can see." And I thought that was just so cool. That like when this person's done, they'll be able to say they did it. People in the BMW club will tell you, every now and then you do get that story in the magazines of, the letter to the editor that says, I've been a member for the last 35, 40 years, and I just sold my motorcycle because I had to for health reasons, and it was a good run. But you never know what's around the corner, so to speak, metaphorically, right? But I've seen people in our riding group over the years back off, not do it, come back, this and that. But so that's the decline sort of overview at the beginning. But then we have these, and I think I might have talked about this a little bit earlier in the decline stage. People transition to other forms, right? So they go from dirt to maybe cruiser, or I'm sorry, for like let's say sport touring to dirt, cruisers, scooters, trikes, right? So something to keep it fresh or lower the risk. And people would say, well, dirt's more dangerous than the road, depending on how you ride. It could be more dangerous, right? But I just think that in this, when people start to downgrade maybe their horsepower and that kind of thing, that's kind of an observation that I notice. And I think just kind of the last part of this one is, this can end quickly. This could be a very short stage. If it's, if not for deteriorating health, it could be for close calls. Some people get injuries. You could also, if someone observes a crash of another person, that could, maybe not even their own close call, but they observe something, because someone else had a crash and says, do I like this enough to continue? Is this still fun? And I don't know, I think we all enjoy this, but you just really never know, how long you're going to go before you decide to end it. So this isn't really a discussion about the depressing effects of having to stop riding, although that is the bummer, I guess. Part of it But I like to think of the person in their 80s that sort of rang the sponge, got out what they could. I think sometimes, I think this one guy also said that he's going to stay an MOA member or something, or whatever or the BMW club was, even though he sold his motorcycles, he was going to stay a member, because just to keep into it, volunteer at rallies, you can go to races, you can still do a heck of a lot of stuff related to motorcycling, even if you don't do it yourself. I guess my conclusion here, is just, wherever you are in this life cycle, just enjoy the ride. Use this talk to do some maybe self-reflection, perhaps make some positive changes.